I'll start again. I'm just going to record the session. There's been a couple of people saying that they couldn't join us tonight, but they would like to be involved. So we'll make the recording available to people afterwards, if that's okay with everyone. Give you fair warning on that. So welcome. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Sarah, and I'm the one who's on the sending end of the emails and the Facebook events that pop up for Aucklanders. We are, however, joined tonight by, I'll get Raewyn Pattermore to give us a wee wave. Raewyn. Thank you. Raewyn is actually one of the Auckland co-leaders. So she is in the background guiding and directing and helping and being all motivating support. Oh, we've got, looks like Sue coming in. And yeah, there's a few other Auckland committee people on the call tonight. Yay. So we've got Nick Main. Give us a wave, Nick. We've got Stephen Pattermore. You can probably work out which Zoom he's on. We've got Jim Hunt has just popped in. Jim, can you hear us to give us a wave? There he is. And we've got Sue as well. So Sue is one of the other Auckland committee people. And then we've got Nicola on the call. So Nicola will give us a wave. For those who don't know, she's the chair of the National Rocha, I don't know what you refer to it as. Organisation, there we are. And Kristel's our co-director. And we've also got, while we're finishing introductions, we've got Paul Murray is zooming in from Hamilton, and he is with Pare Kore, which is the zero waste organisation that is partnering with the Rocha. And you'll hear more from him in a minute. So welcome to this slightly rearranged introduction to Eco Church. I'm going to hand it just a couple of bits and pieces. We've got a little bit of a presentation from Kristel, and then a bit of time with Paul, and then we'll open it up to questions. So please, if it's okay to hold questions about Eco Church and things until then, and that will allow things to flow. There's going to be a couple of breakout rooms, and that will give us a chance to introduce ourselves to each other in a smaller context. And then when we're doing the questions and answers at the end, we'd love to know who you are and where you're from when you are asking the questions. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't think what that was. So if it comes back to me, I'll let you know. But in the meantime, we'll pass it over to Paul, who's going to open with a karakia for us.
That helps. Tēnā tātou katoa. Ngā mihi, ngā rangimārie kia koutou. I tēnei wā huruhuru. Ka mihi atu kia koutou, kua hui mai nei I tēnei pō. Nā mai haere mai ki tēnei kōrero, Pare Kore. We thought we would begin with a karakia, a prayer, and I'll translate what I'm saying after that. So, me noi tātou. Let us pray. He honore, he kororia ki te atua. He maunga rongo ki te whenua. He whakaaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Hanga I te atua, he ngākau hau, ki roto, ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatongia tō wairua tapu, he awhina, he tohutohu I a mātou. He ako hoki I ngā mahi mō tēnei rā. Amen. Honor and glory to God, peace on earth, goodwill to people. Lord, develop a new heart inside all of us. Instill in us your Holy Spirit. Help us, guide us. May we learn also in our work in this evening. Amen.
Amen. Kristel.
Great, kia ora, I'm Kristel. I've joined you from Raglan. I'm the Rocha National Director. Great to be here, and thank you, Sarah, for being in the same room with me. It's great to be up here, even if I can't be in the same room with all of you. Hey, I'm just going to give you a really brief introduction to Eco Church. We obviously have an Eco Church New Zealand website, not to be confused with the UK one, although we are following a similar model and obviously working together. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully something will come up for you. Just a couple of slides just to help frame what I'm saying. There we go. And there we go. Hopefully you can all see that. So Eco Church New Zealand, hey, we're really excited to have kicked off this program. I just want to stress it's a pilot. It's an opportunity for us to say, hey, this is what we're passionate about. We want to connect with churches all over New Zealand, but we're still really open to feedback and to what that program's going to look like. And we would love your input and ideas. So our goal in general is to support churches to actively care for God's earth and make it part of their mission. For the last 10 years plus, Rocha has been working to very much focus towards conservation, and we've got groups all over New Zealand that in a voluntary capacity are engaged in conservation and environmental work. And that has been an amazing journey doing that together. We've also got a large-scale conservation and education program in Raglan, which is part of our kind of flagship project, and we're employing people there. But we've also been really passionate about seeing churches engaged, and we know that lots of people and Christians are involved in their churches and wanted to see a greater acknowledgement of the environmental mission within their churches. And so the Eco Church program is very much about resourcing, empowering and building relationships among churches across New Zealand. And everything that Rocha does actually is that we work collaboratively. We work within communities and we work in partnership. And so it's been great as we've launched Eco Church New Zealand in a very organic way. We've been very and with a bit of COVID thrown in between, so as we've launched, like, it's been great seeing people come to us and share their stories and share what they are already doing. We're very aware that for many churches this is not a new thing, and they're already on a journey, and we're looking forward to partnering more with everyone as we progress. In a nutshell, we want to engage with churches. We are going to have a strong focus on equipping leaders within churches so they feel supported and enabled. And we, through the programs, we hope to obviously inspire many individuals to come on board and not only work within their churches, but just throughout their life and everything that they do. Just to get started around Eco Church, we've had a few people question, like, what does it mean? How do I even get involved? Well, obviously, have a look at the website, have a chat to us. This is something, wonderful about relationships is contact us, talk to us, and we're more than happy to share with you. But just to really briefly, the kind of model is that you can register your church, and the expectation would be is that your leadership is already on board. Obviously, if you want to register your church, you can't just do it without talking to them first. And we hope that you will have a group of people that you are already connected with within your church that you can support each other. So we're hoping that people will not work by themselves, but they'll work together as teams. So there's an opportunity to register your church. You're not signing up for anything that's too scary. It's a relationship agreement. Okay, it's a hey, we're in this together and we're going to do it, and we're on this journey. You may not have done anything when you register your church, or you might have already conquered the world. Okay, so there is and everything in between. So there's nothing too scary about signing up, except that you're saying we're on board and we want to do this thing and we want to share our stories. Of course, a bit of Facebook in there. It's a great way to communicate. We've got groups down south. We've got churches signing up down south. We've got churches interested in Auckland. So obviously Facebook's going to be a great way for us to connect and share those stories. So we've got a specific Facebook page that you can join. And we ask that you share your stories. So if you go to the website, you can already see some wonderful stories of what churches have been doing, and it's inspiring. We could create, just another website that has ideas around sustainability. The unique thing about this is that the stories that are coming out and the stories that are being shared are specific and unique to what churches face. And that makes it a little bit different from, obviously composting still going to look the same, but how might you do it in a church context, and how might you inspire people to do that? And what happens when someone in your, church does not have a pig to eat those scraps? What can you do instead? So that's all about sharing your story, and then you can get started. So go to the website and have a look if you want a little bit more of an idea about that. And then the next step is that we really wanted to provide something practical that churches could engage in. It's all very well having these websites and getting to, but that can become a little bit impersonal. And we kind of thought, what's something that churches can do that everyone's responsible for and everyone can join and participate in? And so through this amazing partnership with Pare Kore, we can encourage churches to go towards a zero waste vision. And everyone can be a part of that. We're rolling that out really slowly, there's opportunities for some areas in New Zealand that can directly tap into that Pare Kore program. But ironically, the two places where we've started these programs, which is in Christchurch and Auckland, there is no specific Pare Kore funding to support churches or any community groups or schools. And so what Rocha is doing is that we are funding that. So it doesn't mean that you don't get to do it, but we're going to do it slightly differently, and we're doing that while we're working together with Paul. But, you're not obliged to do the zero waste program at all. It's not a mandatory thing if you want to become an eco church. We just wanted to give you something really tangible to get started. But if that's not for you, there's a whole bunch of other things you can do. There'll be a huge source of knowledge and ideas within your church and within your leadership, no doubt. But we do have the Rich Living series, so there's some cool resources that you can tap into that you can use in your church or with your small groups. There's a bit of a questionnaire which is still very much open to feedback, where you can look at some different areas of church life that you might say, hey, what's some of the things we can do? And that can be anything from how do you run your service, or how do you manage your buildings, or the land or the site that your church is at. Lots of other ideas there. So it's a questionnaire to help guide you and maybe to trigger some ideas around what can we do and what would be interesting, and maybe inspire you a little bit. So there's no pass or fail there either. And then at your service, so another great resources there to help you if you want to do a service and just create more awareness in your church around creation care, and many other resources. And again, like I said, this is a pilot. All the resources are not there yet. We're still working on those. And what we're looking for is those really church-specific resources and ideas that we want to add there and link into. So as people come up with ideas, we will add those. And as we come up with ideas, we'll add those too. And then we're also working on some specific resources. We're hoping to have a leadership program, church leader program, coming up in the next couple of, hopefully in the next year, funding dependent. We're building on a kids church resource that's in progress at the moment. We're creating some more Rich Living booklets. The next one that's coming out, written by Nicola, is about transport, and much, much more. So in a nutshell, everything we're doing, it's in progress. We're not a huge team, but I know together we have a lot of people across the country that have supported us, that have inspired us, and that are contributing their ideas and their amazing talents to help this program grow. So thank you. That's all from me. You can give me more questions at the end of the night, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview, and now I'm going to pass on to Paul and to continue the story of zero waste. Oh, where am I? Stop the screen.
I'm going to do the same and share my screen.
My screen.
Let me just bring this back up. Okay. All right. Well, greetings once again, everybody. I didn't translate my greeting the first time. I said greetings to everyone who have gathered here this evening for this talk in these times, I te wā, tēnei wā, huru huru, in this time of diffused light, of unclear vision, of not being able to quite see as far as we'd like to. Ko waio, no kānata ahau, no Ontario hoki, ko Ngāti Pākehā toko waka ki kānata, ko arihi me kotarangi ngā hapū, ko taupiri te maunga waikato te awa tainui te iwi kei kirikiri roa ahaua noho ana. Ko extreme zero waste me Pare Kore aku Mahi, ko Paul Murray toko ingoa, no reira mihi ana kia koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings, everybody. And yes, if you picked that little bit up, I'm from Canada originally, from Ontario, and I hark from I was thinking it's interesting that I'm presenting to churches tonight. My upbringing in Canada was in an open brethren chapel in a village of 500 people, a kilometre down the road from the cemetery where 7 generations of 2 sides of my families from Ireland and Scotland were. So that's my sense of community, a very traditional small town farming agricultural church community in Canada. And now I find myself here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, representing a Māori perspective on zero waste. So it's a real honor to be speaking with you tonight and just sharing some ideas. Now, my jobs are with Extreme Zero Waste in Raglan, which is a community-based social enterprise. One of the best examples probably of a community initiative with zero waste practices in the country, with the highest diversion rate of waste in the country. It's sitting at about 75 to 80% of the community's waste not going to landfill. And the other organization I work for is Pare Kore, which is this one, which also started in Raglan and has become a national organization working with marae, with Māori communities, but also has branched out into community organizations, schools, businesses, community groups, now churches, even corporations. So the reach of our sort of understanding and is exciting to see it moving through the community. And I'll show you a visual map a bit later on of how that's all going. But so working with in a Māori context is interesting because it's unique to New Zealand, and it's our own perspective of explaining ourselves, our land, our resources, our water, our waterways, our natural world, the environment we live in here. And when I'm working, I was thinking tonight, there's some lovely parallels between using a Māori perspective, an Indigenous perspective, and coming into an eco-church program. And I just jotted down about 3 or 4 things that I thought were quite similar, quite parallels between the two. Now, I started with this picture of, there we are. there's our spaceship, planet Earth. And the zero waste movement in the Māori world, and Te Ao Māori, is absolutely, definitely based on a spiritual response and connection, just as I assume most of you coming tonight would be saying that your motives and your foundation for action would be based on spiritual understandings. So that's one connection that's the same already. We would, in a Māori context, we would begin with the creation story always. If we were going to talk about these things, the creation story is so important because it retells the story of our origins, but also of our creation of the natural world, of how we as humans, as tangata, came to enter into that and what our place is in that. Māori have an explanation about that, from leaving the time of Te Po, the time of darkness, and entering Te Ao Marama, the time of light, and the creation of the land and the water and the creatures, and how humans were added into that story. And it's so very similar to the Christian retelling of creation. So that's a really obvious parallel as well. And then the third one I thought of was about kaitiakitanga, and that as we came into creation as humans, we were given a special role and a special guardianship, stewardship of all these wonders and all these things given to us, resources given to us, so that the earth may live and thrive and be abundant. And Māori have a real sense of that kaitiakitanga. So tiaki means to look after. So kaitiaki is a person who cares for. So a steward, kaitiakitanga, the act of looking after and handing on. So, you know, instead of, I'm starting with those points to suggest that, you know, to remember our similarities in this connection between Pare Kore and E Rocha, rather than, you know, our differences of thinking, oh, you know, why are we coming from a Māori perspective for churches in Auckland? How does that have connection, and what meaning does that have to us? So, you know, as always, a great partnership, just like we have the treaty partnership in this kind of work. The meeting of two worldviews, or similar worldviews, or shared worldviews, or shared space, or shared planet. There's a lot of reason to share these ideas with each other. Yeah, in this little quick talk, I thought I might just quickly touch on sort of the kaupapa, or the framework, the philosophy, the thinking behind the Pare Kore, which in Te Reo Māori, para means waste, kore is the number 0, so it's waste 0, 0 waste in that word order. That's exactly what this is about. And I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a sort of some of the thinking behind it, and some connections and some challenges to think of on your zero waste journey, on your eco church journey, of some of the things you can take and how we can bring this story right into our own homes and into our own daily practice, our own personal lives, our communities, our whānau, and everything else. So let's go. You know, it really wasn't that long ago that we were a lot closer to our sources of connection in our food production, in our agricultural practices, and everything else. And it's really in this last sort of 50 years we've seen this huge, I'm going to show you some statistics in a minute, this, you know, taking off on the graph of consumption and of waste and of environmental impact and all sorts of things. But it's not that far back that I'm showing this picture because that we can remember being closer to our food source, and being closer to our land, and being closer to our production cycles and our things that we use and what we do with them when we're finished. Going back to my Canadian story again, I remember my grandmother saying to me, you know, on the farm, she just said, if you didn't grow it, if you didn't make it, if you didn't fix it, you didn't have it. Because you didn't buy it, there was no buying things. You had to make it, grow it, fix it, cultivate it, wait for it. And, you know, I have many memories as a child seeing the rows and rows and rows and rows and shelves and jars of preserves. And summertime was busy in Canada. It was a time of getting everything in if you wanted to have food for the winter. You know, so it's not that far back that we're thinking about it. Yet here we are today, and it's quite a different story. We've had an enormous shift in how we access our food, and our access to land, and food sovereignty, and health, and all sorts of things. There's so many topics that come out of this story of waste. Really, the story of production, the story of how we have our stuff, you know, how we get it and what happens to it when we're finished. So Pare Kore is all about working towards zero waste. It's a good choice of words, because we're not suggesting there's a point at which we're going to get there and there's a finishing line and we're done, we can stop working on it now. It's towards, it's a journey, and we talk about it as getting on the waka. It's a journey, you know, we got to start paddling, and it's just as much the journey as the destination. A few motivations for entering the discussion of why we would consider zero waste. You know, we come to it from many different reasons and motivations and springboards. One of them, a really good one to start with, is always the cost. Most places, I work with schools and community organizations, so that's not part of residential rates. They have to pay to have stuff collected and stuff taken away when they're finished with it. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happens when we look into rubbish systems and we see how much of it isn't actually rubbish, and therefore how much extra they're paying that they don't need to, when it's actually materials that could have been composted, could have been recycled, could have been reused, could have been redistributed. But instead we have the one-stop shop sort of lazy bin approach of, you know, don't know what to do about it, can't really think about it, just put it in one place and, poof, it magically goes away. So if it's motivation, you can save money up to 75% of what you pay for your landfill waste. I guarantee at least half of what's in your rubbish systems, I would think, may not exactly even actually be rubbish. Here's some motivations as to why New Zealanders should be thinking about this. Here's where we are on the list of the most wasteful countries. Look where we sit, number 10. Look where the USA is, number 19. People often are shocked by that. They think, what? How can that be true? How can that be true? Well, here's some more statistics. This was in 2018. There's some of the facts of what we put into landfill every day or every year. So 3.6 kilos per person every day, 734 kilos per year. But there we go, 20% increase. It's going up. It's not going down. It's increasing. Our consumption and our disposal is increasing. Our plastic production is increasing. It's not getting better. And in nature, of course, the flip side to that is that there is no such thing as a way. There is no such thing as, when we get rid of it, it's just gone. Everything in nature works in a cycle. Everything works in a circular pattern. So everything that is used or taken or eaten or consumed returns to the story, goes back into the system. The perfect example is gardening. That's why gardening is such a powerful thing to do in schools with children. So you eat the food, you've got the food waste, you put it in the garden, in the compost, and the compost makes soil, you put it in the garden, it grows more food, you eat the food, you put it in the compost, you make new soil, you grow new food, you eat the food, around and around and around. Circular. This is what they mean by a circular economy. And you'll hear this a lot in the zero waste movement. You'll hear it even at the government level in the Ministry for the Environment, talking about creating circular economies and circular models, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a minute. So Pare Kore is all about closing the loop, about creating these circular economies. So instead of a one-way system with our resource use, where we take, make, use, dispose, where it starts and it dumps at the end, about creating a circular closing loop system. So that's like the compost I mentioned just a moment ago. That's a closed loop system because the waste, it's a resource. It goes back into the story, you give it back. The centre in Raglan, the Extreme Zero Waste Community Enterprise in Raglan I was talking about, there's a wood yard, there's a reusing shop, there's a metal yard, there's the green waste yard, there's the composting setup, there's all these things. It's not called the recycling centre, it's not called the dump, it's called the resource recovery centre. Bring it back, recover that resource. Most of these things can be recovered and be repurposed and reused, like how nature does it, around and around and around. So when we're finished with it, we take it back, we use it again, we put it back into the story as much as we can. But most of our production is this one-way system. In the photo on the left, you can see that's not a closed loop system, that's not a circular economy, that's just dumping it somewhere and hoping, well, we'll just go take more stuff and make more stuff after that. So, when we talk about the story of zero waste, people rightly often think of it as being just the final chapter of the story, the last step, the getting rid of something. They think of zero waste as being, which bin do you put things in? Is it a recycling bin? Is it a compost bin? Or is it a rubbish bin? And yes, that definitely is part of zero waste, but I challenge the thinking to say that's, if you're just getting bins set up and putting things in bins, but the rest of the behavior doesn't change, that's just a sorting waste practice. You're just putting it in different places. It's not really a zero waste practice. So the whole story of zero waste starts at the very beginning, at the very beginning of what we're taking and what we're making our stuff from and how we're using it, extraction. And there's a lot of examples around New Zealand of how we take the natural resources to make the things that we want, our everyday materials. This is what, if you don't recognize that, that's black iron sand, that's up here in the Waikato in the west coast, and that's what gets made into, that's what steel comes from. Yeah, lots of examples of extraction. Then production. So we get the stuff to make our stuff, and then how we make it also has an impact. So we all know about 2Y Point. There's the amazing statistic there, 13% of the entire country's electricity is that one plant in the South Island just to make our aluminium. So making things from brand new every time have an enormous impact. So if we're talking about zero waste, our giving it back to the system minimizes these parts of the story where we make it from absolute brand new every time and, you know, consume enormous amounts of resource in order to do it, to have it brand new every single time, to use it once. After production, and then after production, we then, you know, move things all over the place. And depending where you, how far you're moving it from and where you're buying things from, distribution is a major use of resource and of fossil fuel consumption and of emissions and of all the stories around climate change and carbon emissions and all that stuff that goes on. The further we get it from, the more we're moving it in that production model is impact. And the more we move it, the more we package it. We could probably name all of our main 5 natural resources in that photo. We've got the wood and the pallets, trees, we've got plastic made from oil, we've got bottles made from white silica sand, we've got a truck made from black iron sand, we've got rubber, we've got oil fueling the whole thing. So thinking of what we're getting, where we're getting it from, and how we're buying it is also part of the zero waste story. And of course, the more you move it, the more you got to pack it, the more it's got to sit on shelves and, you know, be able to be moved around like that. So, you know, we talk of zero waste as being behavior change. It's a shift in your thinking. It's a shift in your practice. It's not just what bin you put stuff in. It's, you know, where am I buying my food from? And are there local relationships? I like how Kristel mentioned about Rocha being a lot to do with relationships and relationship building. And, you know, lots of arguments here about, you know, buying local and supporting local industry and local markets and local growers and local farmers, which would minimize the packaging, which minimizes the distribution, which minimizes the emissions, you know, this sort of thing. So all still part of zero waste. Consumption, we're the stuff users. That's who we are. We are the people who buy the stuff, want the stuff. Enormous power in making our decisions through that. Then we get to disposal. And I talk of this magic line we seem to draw because we wanted to have the stuff and we bought the stuff and we drank the stuff and ate the stuff and had the stuff and used the stuff. And then when we no longer want it, we suddenly think, not my problem. I don't want to deal with it. Someone else fix it. Someone else put it somewhere. And, you know, it's a bit against what our mothers taught us when we were young. You know, well, if you had it and you played with it and you wanted it, then it's clean up after yourself. What are you going to do with it now? So you wanted it, you had it, you brought it, you had it created and made and used and everything else. And so now what? So it ends up, you know, piles of stuff that we no longer want. And the power of our economy is all about consumption based on ever consuming, consuming. And that rate of consumption is going up. And if you put something up here where I live in the rubbish bin, this is what I show to the kids at school, this is where it goes. If you said, I'm going to throw it away, well, here's a picture of away. This is what away looks like. And that's what away looks like when it's burning. So it's not a pretty sight. And it's not looking after our whenua, after our land. It's not after our sky. It's not looking after our air, our water, our people, our health, our future. You know, people talk about the land we have now. It's not something we pass down to our kids and our grandkids. We're borrowing it from them now. We're looking after it so that they can have it. Excuse me while I just have a quick little drink. That's better. So there's sort of the view of that process. It's very linear. Take, make, use, dump. And in that linear system, the more you take, the more you're making, the more you're using, the more you dump. Our dumping pile's getting, you know, at this end bigger. And the problem is that the taking pile is what's in crisis and is going down, and our natural resources are under enormous pressure, as we'll see in a minute. This is us. Again, another motivation about how New Zealand fits into the story. I have a lesson I do with years 7, 8 students, and they're shocked to find out that, you know, New Zealand is in the Developed Nations League. We are in the 20% of the world's population that consumes almost 80% of everything that's made and used. We are the highest consumers in the world. We are part of that group of countries that consumes 10 times, 20 times comparable measure of stuff to other countries in those other nations. You know, we are the big stuff users. And so when we saw that slide earlier on, that we're the 10th most wasteful country, that we are 5 times the global average. And if you remember that we are in that small 1/5 of the world's population that's using, taking, making, having, buying, and throwing away 80% of the stuff. So it's not a story about over there and but what about China and what about those guys. It's actually a story about us. We're part of this story. So these are our motivations. This is why zero waste is such a powerful kaupapa or philosophy to be a part of, because we're all connected to the story, every single one of us. We're all buying stuff, we're all having stuff and using stuff, especially us in the West. We're doing it the most. And what we end up with it has huge impact, not only in our own country, but, you know, those stories about recycling and rubbish being sent off to poorer countries and having impact on their landscape and their communities and their health. And there's another whole story about that whole thing. Look at that, we're going up. Consumption set to triple, you know, so we're at about 2020, we're on that steady rise. Plastic production, we had a hui the other night on plastic, the story of plastic, and just the figures that are coming out about the plastics that's being made and what happens to it. And it's on a steady increase as well. We've made, of all the plastic ever made since this emergence sort of back in the 50s, I forget what the statistic was, but most of it was in the last 15 years. The greatest number has been the last 15 years. Like we're taking off. We're not becoming more conscious in that. It's on the increase. That's just a quick little slide, probably a bit hard to read, but it's a visual on, you know, if we're taking stuff, and don't forget, spaceship planet Earth is a finite planet. Finite, meaning cookie jar. There's the cookies. That's what you've got to deal with. If you eat the cookie jar is empty. Finite. A lot of it is not regenerating. We have non-renewable resources, which means when you take them, you have them once. That's your one chance to use it. So black iron sand, white silica sand, oil, all those things I mentioned before are non-renewable. So if we take them through that whole process of extraction, production, that whole thing we do, and we only use it once and throw it out, it's such a waste, because those materials, steel, glass, aluminium, could be melted and made again, melted and made again, melted and made again, melted and made again. Whoosh, once we have it, we have it. So that's why recycling, we'll get to in a sec, is an example of giving it back. I was talking before about giving things back. If you're going to use it, give it back, keep it in the story, keep it going around. So recycling for those materials, not plastic, but steel, glass, aluminium, can go around and around and around and around and around. Still takes resources and still goes back into production and still has to do all that. There's other things to be said. However, we hold on to that natural resource. Plastic, you can only kind of melt and make again, maybe once if you're lucky, maybe a couple times if you're lucky. Most plastic is actually downcycling. You make it into something else, and then that ends up in landfill anyway. So it's, you know, I could do a whole hour just on plastic, if I'm sure you could believe me. Have you heard about Earth Overshoot Day? Because we've already hit it. This is the day, this is for the planet, when humanity's demand and use for ecological resources have already exceeded what the Earth can regenerate or through its natural systems replenish within the year. So, yep, that's just happened. And here's a great little visual here of by country. So in New Zealand, by May 5th, we're now in deficit already. So we emptied the bank account by May 5th. So we've got the rest of the year living in a deficit, living beyond our means. We're already doing that. So if we're talking about natural resources, yep, we've already passed the mark in the first quarter. We've got the rest of the year to go, and we're already, you know, in overdraft when we're thinking about our natural resources. So there's a few sort of things to think about as far as what a motivation would be, but here's one last one. As that consumption goes up, look at how this is going down. So by on average, 68% decline in all those animal species in just the last 50 years. So that's in my lifetime. When I was a kid in Canada, putting nature stickers in my little sticker books and thinking about all the wild animals that lived on the planet, they have now diminished by 68% in one generation. In one generation. So as consumption goes up, and as waste piles up, and as demand for ecological resources and natural resources is on a steady increase, the destruction of habitat and the destruction of natural systems is on the diminish. And so once again, this Māori perspective I'm offering today is interesting because there is an explicit relationship with the natural world. You know, the idea that, you know, if they don't live, we don't live. If they're not healthy, we're not healthy. If they're not functioning, we're not functioning. You know, the water that we drink actually physically becomes our bodies. It becomes the cells that replenish in our body. The water that we drink becomes us. Ko Aotearoa ko te awa ko au. I am the river is me. Te ao Māori, you whakapapa to a river. You descend from a river because the river is us. It makes our physical bodies. Looking after the water is looking after us. Healthy water, healthy us. Healthy nature, healthy us. There's no easier way to say it. So looking after everything else is looking after us. And with the studies of what's going on with plastic in every sample of water taken around the planet, from the deepest depths of the oceans to the mountains where no humans live, where plastic rain is falling, where plastic filaments are in the water cycle because of plastic infiltrating every aspect of the natural world. We need to have a bit of a wake-up call and think of what are we consuming and what are we doing with the stuff when we're finished with it. It's now down to our health and the health of our kids and our reproductive abilities and everything else. As plastic enters our bodies, which it is, when it's in our water, when it's in our soils, plastic has no place in nature. And so our consumption habits and patterns have to absolutely change. Anyway, I've just realized, Sarah and Kristel, that we didn't do the first breakout room. We forgot to do that before we started. So we'll have one coming up soon. I promise I won't talk forever because we do want to hear from everybody else in the group. So anyway, Pare Kore is about, you know, this strategies to reconnect with the natural world, to imitate what happens in nature. And there's a great little expression down there, whakatoki down the corner. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, rero taonga mai, hoki taonga atu. So we take taonga, we are given treasures, we are given these things. Think back to the bit about stewardship, these amazing parts of creation and wild, beautiful, gorgeous life and all the things we need for our health and abundance and life on earth are given to us, hoki taonga atu, and we give them back. We keep them moving, we keep them being available for not just us. It's not just about our use this time. Will it still be there? So this is what we call the hierarchy of waste, the waste hierarchy. You can see, note, recycling is second from the bottom. And you may have heard people say, recycling is not going to save us. We can't recycle ourselves out of this predicament if our consumption continues, if our consumption and production of all these things and plastics and single-use items and the way we shop and make and take and use things, if that doesn't change, we'll never keep up with any recycling system that any municipality is ever going to come up with. You can't recycle your way out of it. Go up the waste hierarchy. Those are the more powerful actions. Look how far up reuse is. So having something that you use again and again and again, like this bottle I've had for 10 years, you know, I haven't taken it and used it once and disposed of it. Even if I did recycle it, it didn't have to go through the production process. It didn't have to be distributed and packaged and moved and shipped and all that stuff done and natural resources taken. Reuse impacts all those categories. Minimal extraction, minimal disposal, minimal everything. Just keep using the same one. So zero waste is about these other strategies as well, not just what bin you put it in. So refusing it in the first place. I like that one on top. Just don't even have that. Like single-use items, like cartons that you can't recycle, you can't compost, you can't reuse. Fortunately, we have new things coming through government with some product stewardship, which means the people who produce stuff have to take more responsibility for putting it in something that the end result is thought of, so that it's not passed on to the consumer, that we're left up going, what do I do with this? So yeah, there's things happening, there's things moving, and lots of priority products have been named and plastic packaging is coming under question. So it's not all about consumers having to try to save the world by all this stuff that's coming down the production line at us, but our consumption patterns do have to change. You know, repairing things, repurposing things, composting things, they're all about keeping the stuff in the system. And at the very last step, dispose. You really have to get rid of it. Excuse me. Okay, so what's our goal? normalizing, well, this is the goal from Pare Kore perspective. This isn't the eco churches or the Rocha perspective necessarily. This is sharing my kaupapa from Pare Kore, is that we're just working to normalize zero waste from a Māori worldview in Aotearoa New Zealand, that, you know, it's just normal to feed animals food waste. It's just normal to feed soil, to feed worms, to feed chickens, to feed pigs. It's normal to wash and reuse things. It's normal to use the church kitchen or use the hall and wash the plates rather than buying ones you use once and throwing them out. You know, we talk of convenience, but I always say convenience for who? Maybe you in that moment, but not for the planet, not for the land, not for the soil, not for the water, not for the air. It's not convenient for anybody else, the single-use kind of lifestyle. So working to normalize zero waste, just change our practice. Kids expect it, you know. In some of the settings I go to, and they're like, what? Where's the bin? You know, where's the food bin? You know, getting shocked going to a place and there's only a rubbish bin. So, you know, that should be our new norm. That our new norm is that we, you know, engage in these practices. There we go. That's what Pare Kore looks like up here in the North Island. Every little red blip represents a marae, a community organization, a school, a community group, and hey, we might get some churches on here now. It's pretty amazing. It's nice to see the spread. If you go to the Pare Kore website, which is this one, parekoremaori.nz, if you click on marae, so think of, you know, we're in Māori worldview here, so marae meaning home base. That's how you get to that map I just showed you. So you can zoom in and you can look in your area, and as you zoom in, they spread out, and it tells you exactly which organizations are the ones around you. So have a look and see if there's anybody near you that you know of. I work primarily with schools and community groups, not on marae, but I've got lots of schools in the Waikato on the program. Like that one. So working in the community, Pare Kore ki te hapori, in the community. So it's, you know, this is a mainstream school, and using the Pare Kore point of view to work on their waste and think about where they are and their connections to their land and their water and their community and their whānau and their people, and seeing the impact of dealing with their waste. This is what our program is about. It's kind of similar to what Kristel shared before with what eco-churches might involve. When community organizations and schools and everything else join up with us, this is what happens. We present the kaupapa to them like we're doing now. They sign an agreement, do a waste check, which I'll tell you about in a sec. We do a workshop, which I'll tell you about in a sec, and we just continually evaluate our process and how can we help and how can we get better and what do we need to learn and what could make that happen. Here's a waste check. And this is different to a waste audit, but this is something we do. We offer in support to everyone that's working with Pare Kore, where the answers you're questioning here are, it's not looking at how much you're recycling, it's not measuring your paper bin or anything like that. It's just saying, let's check to see how your systems are working and if they are working. So let's only look in your rubbish. And is there anything in your rubbish that isn't actually rubbish, and how much of that isn't actually rubbish? So we sort things out, as you can see, and we put them into all their categories of kinds of waste. You can see food waste and clean paper, cardboard, dirty paper, looks like plastics. And it's like a diagnostic tool, and you find out, wow, like look at that picture in the bottom right-hand corner, 3 bins, 180 liters of once wiped dirty paper, like paper towels. You know, that was in a week at school or a couple of days at school. Look at what we're generating, you know. Never seems bad when you put just your one thing in the bin yourself, but when you look at the big picture and pile it up, you go, whoa, we're paying for bags full of once wiped paper. That's what we're paying for. So waste checks are really great feedback on what's happening at your place. And yeah, what you need to fix, what your next steps are, what's going on. You might have paper bins, but why is it all in the rubbish? So that kind of helps those things. Waste audits, always, it's always about 75% always of what's in people's rubbish systems isn't actually rubbish. Could have been composted, could have been recycled, could have been fed to animals. So it's a wonderful tool to know where to start next. We've been having discussions with Rocha about coming up with some, signage and cool things to make it look official and to make it look like a real system, so people know that this is your kind of place and this is what goes on here. So that's all to come. We've been supporting with events, and that could be something that churches may consider too. If you have any kind of event, a public event where I don't know if you do that sort of thing, but setting up those systems, even modeling that behavior. So when your community comes to you and others use your venue and others use your church buildings and your centers, that you have a kaupapa in place. This is a church that does it this way, and thank you for using our venue, but could you please do this, put it there. And learning and workshops, it's behavior change, so it's all about supporting people and understanding this is a school staff. So imagine the context of church or your community or your leadership team that Kristel was mentioning, of that leadership development. So there's Wānanga that can help support the kind of ideas of zero waste and what the impact is, and some of the benefits. Kaitiakitanga, that stewardship, that sense of looking after our place, like we're looking after it so that we can hand it on, so that there is more of it. Whakapanongatanga, working together as a body, together in unity. It can't just be one person's thing, can't just be one passionate person's thing that tries to drive the whole school bus in the church of zero waste. It has to be an understanding that, it's all of us. We're all responsible for the stuff we use. And so on. So, ngā mihi, that's basically what I did, and I stuck to time for the first time, Kristel. How about that? That's good news. Well, what we thought we'd do, I apologize that we didn't have a breakaway group at the start. What the first question would have been, so maybe we can kind of do 2 in 1 when we break into some groups now. The question before I began was to just have a chance to talk to each other for just a couple of minutes. Question number 1 could be, what's your current situation? So where are you coming from? Like, you've come to this hui tonight. What's happening at your place? What's happening in your church? What's motivated you to be here? Have you started anything? Are you doing nothing? Are you only thinking about it? Where are you at? That's the question, number 1. And then the second breakout room, which was meant to happen at the end of this presentation, was to ask, okay, so from that little kōrero, from that talk that I just gave, any surprises, just a response. What did you think? What was something new that you hadn't considered? What's it making you think about? So we're going to go into breakout groups now. Are you ready for that, Kristel, at your end? So current situation, where are you at? You can introduce yourselves to each other a little bit in your smaller groups. It's your chance to have a little chat with each other. Where are you at? What's happening? Like, why did you come? And what was something interesting that we just found out about? I'm finished. How did that go, everybody? That was interesting, just hearing some feedback. And again, I apologize for not having the other chance to speak before that. It's a nice little energizer for each of us to have a chance to just chat about where we're at. Does anybody, just before we move on to Q&As, does anybody just want to share something of what they were talking about in their group? Perhaps maybe the second question of, was there anything that kind of made you go, wow, or a new idea, or a surprise, or a new way of thinking from what we just talked about in the last half hour or so?
I'm afraid I'm still finding it hard to believe that we are more wasteful than the US.
Per capita, not total volume, but looking at comparing household to household of what we're doing. And I think a big part of that is to do, and that may change, a big part of that to do is to do with our compostable natural waste in our rubbish systems. But like Hamilton, in the last 2 weeks, we've just started a food collection system. So now none of our food has to go into rubbish. So that's a whole city, changing, just like that. So, watch this space. Hopefully we're going to change in that. Thanks, Nick.
I have a question, Paul.
Sure, Bruce.
Do you know of many churches in New Zealand that have established a waste bin outside their church building for people to bring their waste and dump it there, or for people locally to come? Do you
Interesting
know of
question.
many churches?
Well, I wouldn't know. I haven't really done any work with churches much yet. This is the starting point for me. So that's interesting. Do you mean in the sense of providing a service for the community so that the
Yes,
community
yes.
doesn't have to pay? That's interesting.
But even for their own people to bring things that they can't use anymore to a special point in the space outside the church, either in a separate room or stuff that can't be recycled, into a bin where they can put it.
Well, I've heard of lots of examples of things like, well, churches are obviously the best at, op shops and taking in reused and redistributing items like that. I mean, that's a great example of, community returning resource for the use of others. There's lots of pop-up things I see, like shared food cupboards, or sharing overflow from your garden for other people in your community. Those swaps, we do things up here like a crop swap where everyone turns up and you just bring whatever you have. So whether you've just got some herbs in the garden or some spinach, or you made some jam, or you've got some sourdough culture, or you just bring anything and you put everything on tables on a nominated day. I encourage you to do this, it's so much fun. You all just bring whatever it is. You might have 5 lemons from your garden. You put it all on tables, everyone gets together, forms connections with the community, introduce yourselves to each other, say what you brought. Oh, this is my rhubarb jam. And then you say go, and everyone walks around and takes a little bit of everything, and you all go home with this overflowing basket of a little bit of everything, and all you brought was 5 lemons. It's like the 5 loaves and 5 fishes story. Like you come with a little bit and suddenly it's multiplied and everybody's fed. Crop swap, I've heard of clothing swaps. Do the same. It's like a Tupperware party but for reused clothes. And you all turn up and you say, I've got lots of extra pants, and you just swap and you go home with new outfits. And there's a lot of fun ways of doing that. Just because you're finished with it doesn't mean it's rubbish. That we shouldn't be encouraged to throw things out just because it's finished its job with us. How can we redistribute that, and how can someone else make use of it? And churches would be great, I would think, at this, because you're a community hub, you're a center, you're a place that people come to, and you're a center point of your community. So it makes sense that you could encourage some of these kind of practices and fun things. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
No.
Go, Jenny.
Yeah, shall I go? Thank you.
Yeah.
Your paper towel picture, Paul, struck a chord with me. Because something like 34% of our church waste by weight is our paper towels.
Wow.
So we're wondering about composting them, but then people aren't sure if they need to be bleached. We have done quite a bit of research into electric hand dryers, and they seem more efficient anyway, but then we've got to rewire the bathrooms. So just wondering what your solutions have been for these.
You ask all the golden questions. Yep. And like so many of these things, there's not do this or do that, or this is better or that's better. You've got this multi-pronged thing. So when you use paper towels, the issue is now you've got all this paper waste and it's single-use paper, and what do I do with it? If you use electric hand dryers, then you're looking at, well, consumption of electricity and how much are we paying for power bills. And some people say it's not hygienic because it's blowing stuff around. That's another point of view. A third option is get the old hand roller out, but then in COVID, is that something we can do? Sharing towels and doing things like that. So it's kind of like, if I do this, this happens. If I do this, that happens. And if I do that, that happens. Which consequence do I want to deal with? There's not going to be a one thing fix the other thing. Yes, you can compost them. I've got some schools trialing that, but you have to be able to compost it. You can't just, depends on your volume. You can't just pile in piles and piles and piles of paper. You'll just have piles and piles and piles of paper. It's not going to turn into compost unless you're layering it with green waste, and whether your centre collects green waste or not. Can the paper towels go in? What sort of, do you have, I'm just trying to think of what happens in Auckland with waste systems. It depends which part of the city you're in, because there's some parts
Wellington.
that do. Yeah, some have a green waste system. Can you put anything compostable in your waste collection systems?
No, they are just trialling it in one suburb. So
Yeah.
you're taking Hamilton's lead by the sounds, which is good.
Yeah, well, yeah, and Christchurch has been doing it for a number of years, and I think Pare Kore in Auckland was doing a trial as well at one point. But yeah, that's a tricky one. It's one of those things. We have to be clean, we have to be healthy, we have to be safe, and we're trying to be mindful, and we're trying to think of our resource use. If you come up with the best answer, you could let us know. I don't have a clear answer on that. You have to just think, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to encourage reusables? Is that appropriate? Do we want to go electric? What's the comparative impact? You know, what's the bigger impact? Electric use, electricity use, or paper use? Hard to say. I haven't really answered your question either.
No, yeah, well, okay. It sounds like it is a tricky one and there is no magic answer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, do we want to just, so Kristel and Sarah, are we just sort of on to general? We're at 8:16, so we want to finish by 8:30. We've kind of naturally blended into some questions anyway. So the questions, I'm not sure if you want to direct anything further specifically regarding eco-churches, or whether people are just wanting to talk about zero waste practice in general, or how to start the journey perhaps. What are some next steps for people coming away from this? What would you like us to talk about in this time?
Yeah, so just to kind of recap, obviously now you've heard a little bit about eco-church and zero waste. You know, if you do one, you don't have to do the other, but obviously, like I said, it's a great way to start. We are developing more resources and an A to Z guide for churches around doing zero waste, which is kind of coming out of some of the workshop stuff that we've done in Christchurch. We've got some other great links to the Pare Kore website to get you started if you're looking for information. In terms of Auckland, what we're hoping to do is, we were just saying, can we squeeze it in this year? It's probably going to happen next year, just with all the challenges of COVID. But we are looking at doing a workshop, a hands-on workshop, where we look to bring churches together that have an interest in doing zero waste and doing that waste audit, which would be a hands-on workshop with Paul and myself and others in the Auckland region. Obviously it's a big region, so we're going to be looking at, you know, groups of churches, bringing them together and doing those workshops next year probably. I have also been talking to Kathy, who's there in the corner, and we've been talking about doing that with the Anglican diocese as well. So perhaps doing, you know, a presentation or a workshop or something. So if you're an Anglican church, you might end up connecting with us at some stage early next year. So there will be opportunities. For those of you that are not in the Auckland area and maybe a little bit more on the edges, fringes, or in other parts of the country, you can, you know, obviously first contact us and let us know what you're up to, and have a bit of a chat about, you know, maybe whether you'd like to join as an eco-church. But also there are trainers like Paul around the North Island that you can directly tap into from Pare Kore. So that's the amazing thing. So if you're a church in Hamilton, for instance, or Wellington, you might be able to connect with those people directly and have them come and do a workshop at your church. And it'll be a little bit more personalized and hands-on than what we can do if we have a collection of churches. But we still want to be able to provide something for you in Auckland. So like I said, our Rocha is going to support that to happen in the coming months, but probably more than likely next year. But in the meantime, we have the resources, and we've got lots of the questions that you're asking, like the paper towel one has already come up before, and that A to Z guide and some of the other resources on our website will perhaps be helpful to get you going.
Yeah, so we have got 10 minutes now.
Yep.
And I would like to throw it open to,
Yep.
you know, questions. There must be some burning ones in there, either for Paul on what he's talked about, or for us on the eco-church thing, Auckland in particular, or just generally for Kristel. So take it away. Yep, go for it, Raven.
No one has talked about design. So many things could be designed so that they can be recycled.
Yeah, that's definitely a piece of the puzzle, Jim. I'm not sure that it's within what we have the power to control in this conversation.
Well, look at the aims. Where are we going? There are other people besides churches that we can connect with.
Yeah, that's true. No, we'll definitely keep that in mind for down the track.
This whole matter of the relation between science and religion, and the religions and backgrounds of ideals of different races.
Yeah.
And something that's happening sort of in that space that is moving at the moment, whether you've heard recently in the news, some of the government initiatives like priority products and product stewardship. This is for the, like you're saying, at the design end of, we're at the production part of the story where people making the stuff and people packaging the stuff have to plan in and design in the packaging and consider what is being used. And those changes are sort of happening now as we speak within New Zealand in our packaging forum, and it's what we call product stewardship. So yes, absolutely. We can't just have the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff where we just have consumers trying to figure out what to do with all this stuff when we're finished with it. Absolutely, the emphasis has to be on at the design end, and if anybody wants to influence any of that, there's always submissions happening all over the show. There's websites we can direct you to if you want to have input or voice on, you know, how we design the materials we use. New Zealand has one of the least regulated packaging sort of forums in the developed world. You can pretty much stick anything in anything and it's fine. There's not very many rules and it just ends up piling up the other end. So yep, it's a very good point. Design is absolutely a part of the story of this.
Yeah. Raywin, you had a question?
Wanted to ask Paul if the Earth Overshoot Day is an annual thing or was that a one-off? And we're
well, yeah, it is an annual thing. They do it every year. They kind of just keep you can look at the website and the sort of method at which they arrive at it. They explain how they arrive at that number. And it's to do with kind of like on an annual cycle of what's available to us each year. And it's marking off when we got to that point when we've already, you know, hit it and we're already, you know, in debt.
Yeah. I wonder if they're noticing each year that it's getting, you know, a shorter time until they reach that point.
Interesting. You can see, I just looked it up this afternoon and I saw the 2021, but if you just Google Earth Overshoot Day, I saw there was a 2017 or 2018, so you could easily pull them up and have a look and see if that's changing. I did read something about, you know, there was a slump with COVID in our consumption. It temporarily slowed because we all stayed home and, you know, like they famously said, what did I read during the lockdown period? They said, what? You mean we're having a crisis simply because everybody's staying home and only buying what they absolutely need? You know, we stopped having to consume so much and it slowed. So, but yeah, no doubt has picked up again.
Nick, did you have a question?
Somebody had a hand up in the chat just a second ago. Nicholas Main, hand up.
So I just wanted to come back to Jim's point, and I know that the zero waste component of the Eco Church does imply that we're not involved in the product design a lot, although we do produce a service in churches such as communion, and we can think about how we incorporate waste into that. But I would also encourage people to think about Eco Church in terms of its equipping and its educational role and its challenging role. And churches reach into all sorts of components of our communities in terms of the people who congregate here. We have supermarket owners, we have people who own takeaway stores, we have people who are workers and people who are business owners, and we all have a role we play within our communities. We have politicians in our churches. And it's a place that we can be using the Eco Church model to discuss the ideas that then feed into product design and product delivery that can create systemic change rather than just change within our own congregation.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah, and Vicky made a good point about the product design course at Massey, and there must be, you know, kind of ongoing work in those kind of learning spaces. I wanted to ask one question, if I can have two people give us a very brief, what have you taken out of today, or what do you think you might do this week or this month in your church that you have been thinking about during this presentation? Okay, shall I start?
Yeah.
We've got a hand. On you go. I can't see your
Courtney.
name. Courtney.
Yeah.
I was thinking that a really good idea would be, and I mentioned this with my breakout group, but to invite other churches to come together, say once a month, for an hour or two on a Saturday to do a work bee together. It could be a beach cleanup, it could be planting some native trees. But it's so good to work together to get to know each other. And I think sometimes it's easy to feel isolated in churches, like if you don't have people around you who are kind of walking the journey with you, but there will be others in other churches, and finding times to come together to be working together, I think could be a step in the right direction. And I wonder if anybody's doing that.
Well, it's one of the reasons why we started this conversation in Christchurch, was because there's numerous churches there that have already been connecting over the last couple of years and have done a joint conference around sustainability. They've shared resources and ideas, and they have a Hope seminar once a year together. And that has kind of supported each other and inspired each other to do more, and that is in partnership with Rocha as well. So in a small way, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it happens in other ways as well, but that's one of the ways that we have been involved and aware of, and that's been great, because it's drawn people together in a sense the way you have all come together today. And they had already started some of that several years ago. So, and it'd be a great way for churches to do more together and to bring their communities together as well.
All right, one final question / comment from Mike. Go ahead.
Wow, I'm very honoured. I just wonder how many people are involved in Creation Month during September. Do your churches take part in Creation Month? Yeah, quite a few, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a good way to for us to be finding allies and other enthusiasts within churches, because it is very easy to feel isolated, I think. There's very few people within my church who naturally take this co-papa on, and the more we work together, the more we can possibly persuade other people. Or persuade, I don't know. But that's been my question, I suppose, is how do we spread our enthusiasm without becoming eco-fascists?
It's the challenge of inspiration, I think, isn't it? We want to inspire, we don't want to impose, and that's the challenge. We talked about that in our breakout room as well.
Yeah, one of the things
I'm going to ask is that, are the resources that you're offering, I haven't looked at them, but do they address that sort of progression? Do you start with it being a personal faith response that leads to a group or the wider church, and then a community modelling activity that spreads it into the community?
Yeah, well, I think whenever many of us talk about it, we kind of say, starting with a service or a reflection on the biblical basis for why we do all this. Yeah. Like you say, it can be easy to come across as an eco warrior, but people miss the fact that there's a strong faith-based reason for doing it. And so I think if we can go back and examine those the scriptures and the Bible and the context of why we do this, and that it's actually an act of worship, you know, and there's obviously a heck of a lot more theology than that, a few sentences from me. But some of those resources are on our website, both the Rocha website as well as the Eco Church website. And I mean, you've got some great people even in this room with Stephen Padamore, who talks on that stuff. We've actually got a recording of his that's available. Beulah, you know, there's many people, and we do have a contact list of speakers that you may be able to contact. If you don't have those resources or abilities in your own church, you can invite someone to come and speak. We can't promise that we can come to every church in any week, but there's definitely those connections are there, and there's a big Rocha network around the country. So we're definitely go and have a look at the resources, and anyone that would want to speak on the topic, I think will find there's a lot of information there that will help you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Lovely. All right. Well, that feels like a good place to finish up tonight. Thank everyone so much for coming along. It's been great to see you all. A shame we couldn't share a meal, which is always a thing that we try and do at our Rocha gatherings, but this time we'll just do that virtually. To finish, what I would like to do is my church has a benediction that we say at the end of every service. We say it in Te Reo first, and then we say it in English. So what I thought tonight is that I will say it in Te Reo. It'll be on the screen for you to follow if you want. And then I will also say it in English, and you all are welcome to say it to yourself and each other. You can unmute if you like. It causes a little bit of a cacophony, but we all know what we're saying, and it's nice to be able to say the benediction to each other. So thank you very much for coming, and Kristel will share the screen to put the benediction up. He ponana koutou nā te atua, me hoatu nā moimoia me nā wawata kia koutou. I runga I a koe nā atawhai a te atua, pira hoki I te mura o te kapura. Arohatia manakatia te ariki, I roto I te kaha o te wairo tapu. Kia tau te rangamarie ki runga I a koutou, I roto hoki I nā ringaringa o te atua. Mā te wairo tapu e whakakaha koto I nā wā katoa. Āmine. You are God's servants, gifted with dreams and visions. Upon you rest the grace of God, flames of fire. Love and serve the Lord in the strength of the Spirit. May the peace of Christ be with you. Strong arms of God sustain you. Power of the Holy Spirit strengthen you in every way. Amen. Amen. Lovely. We'll be in touch, and future events will be distributed the same way through the mailing list and the Facebook groups.
Yeah, and just one last mention, if you want to be on either on our Facebook page, connect with us. If you want to receive more updates, you can go online and register, you know, put your email out to us and we can add you. And if you have any other questions for myself or Paul or anyone on our team, please feel free to email us. We'd love to connect with you and have a conversation. So this is not the end, this is the start. And we're really looking forward to connecting with you all and seeing where this journey takes us. And last but not least, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
It's always a pleasure to work with you and to share. And thank you so much for coming along and doing this work with us.
Pleasure. It's been wonderful sharing this space with all of you tonight. Thank you for your time on a Saturday night. I look forward to watching this space and seeing what comes.
Right. Thanks a lot. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.
God bless.